Zuber and Company, fire forensic experts and forensic engineers. Seeking answers from ashes. Seeking answers.
Today, we're jumping into a really interesting legal case that kicks off with a fire at a factory, but quickly becomes a huge fight over an insurance payout. It's a story all about numbers, evidence, and what happens when the two just don't seem to add up. All right, so here's how we're going to break this down. First, we'll set the scene with the fire itself. Then, we'll get into the massive disagreement over the insurance payout. After that, we'll look at the really strange part, the 3 different ways the loss was calculated. And finally, we'll see how the commission made its final decision. Okay, first things first. We need to get a handle on the basic facts of what happened and when, because the timeline is what gets this whole dispute rolling.
And what's wild is how fast this all went down. In December, the business gets an insurance policy. Just 2 months later, boom, a fire sweeps through the factory. The owner, believing everything was lost, files a claim for nearly 59 lakh rupees. Seems straightforward enough, right?
Well, this is where a seemingly simple claim turns into a full-blown legal battle. The heart of the conflict really begins to take shape right here.
So AP Knitwear's put in their claim, and according to their books, the total value of the stock they lost was just under 59 lakh rupees. From their point of view, that's the number that mattered.
But then, look what the insurance company came back with. It wasn't even close. They paid out just over 18.5 lakh rupees. And get this, they called it a full and final settlement. Wow.
Now, we're not talking about a small rounding error here. There's a gap of more than 35 lakh rupees between what was claimed and what was paid. So you can see why the business owner wasn't just going to let this go. They decided to fight it.
So the big question is, how on earth do you get a difference that huge? Well, it all boils down to one critical document, the report filed by the insurance surveyor who was sent to assess all the damage. And this is where things get kind of weird. The surveyor didn't just come up with one number for the loss. Nope. They presented 3 completely different assessments, each one based on a totally different way of calculating things. How is that even possible? Just take a look at this. It lays the whole problem out so clearly. If you go by the company's own accounting records, the loss is pretty high, over 45 lakhs. But when the surveyor actually did a physical check of what was left and verified the books themselves, those numbers just plummet. And guess which number the insurance company decided to use? You got it, the lowest one. So why did the surveyor basically throw out the company's highest number? Well, their report had this one killer line. It said that the company's purchases right before the fire in those last 2 months just looked abnormal. The whole pattern was completely out of trend.
And when you see the numbers, you really get what they were talking about. See, the company's normal purchase-to-sale ratio was super steady, right around 1.33. But then in January, it suddenly jumped over 8. And in February, it just exploded to an incredible 69. That is a massive red flag. It looked like they were suddenly piling up huge amounts of stock without actually selling much of it.
So you've got this complete mess, right? The company's records are on one side, and the surveyor's very skeptical report is on the other. There was only one place for this to get sorted out, the consumer commissions.
And it wasn't a quick trip. First, the case went to the state commission, which sort of split the difference and gave the owner a little more money. But the owner wanted the full claim, so they appealed, taking it one step higher to the National Commission for the final word.
Now, before we hear the verdict, you have to understand something really important about these cases. A survey report isn't just some random opinion. The courts treat it as a primary, expert, and incredibly significant piece of evidence, done by a licensed pro right there on the scene. And in the end, that survey report was pretty much the nail in the coffin. The National Commission dismissed the appeal. The reasoning was crystal clear. The business owners simply didn't provide strong, hard evidence, like delivery receipts or proof of payment to suppliers, to prove the surveyor was wrong. Those out-of-trend purchases were never explained, so the detailed survey report was considered far more reliable than the company's own records.
So what does this all mean? It leaves us with this really critical question. The business had its own paper trail, its own set of books, but the surveyor's on-the-ground investigation showed by paper trail just didn't seem to line up with reality. And what the commission ultimately decided was that if your story has holes and your documents look suspicious, an expert's physical assessment is going to win. It's a huge lesson in the world of insurance. When disaster strikes, every single document matters.